Thanks so much for joining me on the Slice of Healthcare podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited. This is, we've had a lot of like digital health companies come on the podcast over the last couple of weeks, and it's really been a big focus for us. But in general, healthcare innovation is really where we like to focus on. So I'm really excited to continue to learn more about you and the center that you're at, as well as we'll go into it later in the show, some of the challenges around brain cancer research, which I'm really excited to learn more about that. So I think we should dive right into it. If you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your background, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Dr. Shwetal Mehta, and I'm the Deputy Director and COO of the Ivy Brain Tumor Center. I'm a scientist by training. I received my Ph.D. in molecular biology and then went on to do my postdoctoral training in molecular neuro-oncology. After that, I was recruited to Barrow Neurological Institute, which is one of the largest neurological institutes and a neurological center in the US and in the world. And we see the largest number of brain tumor patients here at our center. So after moving to BNI about 8 years ago, I started my own research lab, which was focused on finding ways to target treatment and therapy-resistant brain cancer cells. And due to this background of mine, about 3 years ago, when the Ivy Brain Tumor Center was established through a large philanthropic donation from the Ben and Catherine Ivy Foundation, as well as the Barrow Neurological Foundation, I was asked to oversee the research operations for the center. And to give you some background, brain cancer, although rare, like 9 out of 10 patients diagnosed with aggressive brain cancer die within 5 years. And I think this is our mission at the Ivy Brain Tumor Center, is to change this scenario and bring new therapies that work for brain tumor patients, increase life expectancy, and contribute to a cure by getting new drugs for these patients.
What was it about? I mean, was it just the ability to continue your research and contribute to, this cause that obviously you care about? What was it about the Ivy Brain Tumor Center that like kind of really drew you into like, hey, I want to be a part of this?
Yeah, so for a basic biologist like myself, there is nothing more than, being able to be part of something so much larger, where you can see your efforts being taken from bench all the way to bedside into patients, like identifying something and taking it all the way through. What's unique about the Ivy Brain Tumor Center is that we are asking those right questions, right? We are asking questions whether the drug is working for the patients or not before we end up giving it to the patient. So that philosophy, the fact that we want to give answers back to patients quickly, move at that pace, really attracted me to the center.
Can we I guess, switch focus here a little bit to that topic that we mentioned in the introduction, right? So when you're doing this research, can you talk us through some of the challenges to brain cancer research?
Absolutely. And I think maybe I can explain a little bit more about what the Ivy Brain Tumor Center stands for.
That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Right. So we are here to, unlike conventional trials, use a unique approach of what is called the phase 0 approach for our clinical trials. And at the center, we are focused at making sure that a drug that we are testing, first we ask the question whether the drug gets to the brain tumor or not, because within the brain tumor community right now, the biggest challenge is that the drugs don't get through the blood-brain barrier. Like there is a barrier between your body and brain, and the drugs don't pass through it. Most of the trials don't ask those questions, right? So our philosophy through phase 0 trials is to ask whether the drug is getting to the tumor or not, whether it's doing its job or not, and then move forward and give patients the drug for long period of time.
Interesting. It's how many people do you, I guess, work with on a day-to-day basis in your research? Is it a core group?
as a core group, the Ivy Center is a team of multidisciplinary people. It includes clinicians, neurosurgeons, neurologists, neuro-oncologists, and radiologists. This team of scientists, chemists, nurses, administrators, all working together, all under one roof. We are about 50 people, all working together towards this common goal, and I think that's the biggest advantage of our center and that we are able to provide answers quickly because everything is centered here. That's one of our mission is to give answers back quickly to patients.
Would you say that's the most important part of your mission? Is that the biggest piece?
It's one of the biggest pieces. For talking about challenges for brain tumor patients, time is of essence. So the survival rates haven't changed for over 30 years. There are only a couple of FDA-approved drugs really out there for these patients. So time is of essence. We want to fail quickly. So we want to identify drugs that are not getting into the brain and make sure people don't spend more time and effort on those drugs. We want to identify drugs that do work to get into the tumor and then move those things quickly. So definitely time is our one of our key priorities. Like we want to move fast. We also are very, we know every patient is different. Every patient is unique. Brain tumors are very heterogeneous. So not one patient's tumor is not similar to the other patient. So we match patients to the drugs. We make sure we test the patient's tumor and make sure that their tumor is matched to the drug we are testing before they start and get enrolled on a trial. So both of those things are key, time as well as make sure that we match, and then we combine new therapies. So most clinical trials out there are testing a single drug. Our goal is to combine. We know that a single drug is not going to work for patients. So we combine multiple drugs together and ask these, again, same questions. Is the drug getting into the tumor or not? Is it really hitting its target or not before the patients go on to receive long-term drug treatment?
Can you talk about the drug selection process looks like? How do you determine which drugs to try to see what the result is?
So we are agnostic to, it's not my favorite protein or my favorite gene that we are going to be looking into. So based on what's known right now, what makes most sense with respect to pathways that are important for this particular cancer, we look for new molecules that have properties that make sense, that this drug is going to be a good molecule for us to put our efforts on. Those are the things that we definitely look for, like what would work in combination, what good cocktails of drugs that we can bring for these patients, right, that have not been tested and tried for years before. And obviously, we want to make sure these are all safe combinations for the patients.
This is something I've always been interested in this area, and I've never had the opportunity to have someone like yourself come on the podcast and be able to talk through some of those points. I'd also be curious if you could talk through how, I guess, in the patients that you've seen that have maybe reacted better and have either stayed alive longer, have maybe a higher quality of life for a longer period of time. What are some of those things that you maybe see in those patients that, because you were talking about how people that have aggressive brain cancer, it's not really that great of your life expectancy is not that great, right? When you have it, what are some of the factors that allow people to maybe, is it really just about catching it early? Is that what it comes down to?
Yeah, unfortunately, this cancer is really aggressive in that aspect, that when patients show up, it's already has kind of taken over their brain, right? These tumors show up when they're already high grade 4 tumors. So it's not that slow progression that maybe we're going to catch it early. And then we're running against time at that point of time. So early detection right now, that we don't have that. So what we want to do is, as soon as a patient come in, we want to find out what therapy that they're going to take that is going to help them. Current standard of care for this patient is surgery, followed by radiation and chemotherapy. So that's standard of care. And we already know that almost all tumors recur post that treatment. And so what we want to identify is these new drugs that are going to increase that lifespan, like that time period, from 14 to 18 months longer. And for that, we need to identify drugs that actually work, right? The combinations and cocktails that actually work for these patients.
Are you saying even when removed, a lot of these tumors will come back?
Exactly. So this cancer is very infiltrative. By that, what I mean is these tumors grow beyond the mass that is seen by in the MRI. So the surgeons can go in and remove the tumor bulk, but there are these tumor cells that are remaining. That's those are the ones that are the cause of core recurrence, and we want to target that. And which is why the bar for making sure that the drug is getting into the brain has to be higher. We have to make sure that the drug gets into the brain in those regions of the brain where these tumor cells are, right? Where the blood-brain barrier is still intact. So we have to make sure that the drugs can get out of the blood vessel into the brain tissue, and which is exactly what we focus on. We ask those questions.
Does any part of your research take a look at like making it so that some of these tumors don't come back? Does that help someone if you were able to stop these tumors from reoccurring? Is that a positive? I'm assuming that'd be a positive step in your research.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's our mission is that we are able to bring an FDA-approved drug within 10 years. We want to make sure, change the current life expectancy for this patient population. That's our goal. And as I said, like the biggest hurdle and biggest challenge is identifying those drugs that can get into the tumor region. And a single drug is not going to work because we know these tumors have, it's not just one mutation or one pathway that is gone awry. We have to come up with a cocktail of drugs, again, and which are specific for each patient. So precision medicine, get it done faster, identify drug cocktails that do work for these patients.
This is really interesting. Again, I mentioned this when we were talking earlier, right? This is not an area I am familiar with. It's an area I'm very intrigued to learn more about, and you've been super helpful. And I think you were able to do something that it can be difficult for certain people, right? Able to break it down to a level too that like I feel lots of people can understand, which I think is also really important, right, for the patients and their families to understand, what you're working on and how it can maybe help them, in the near term and long-term future. So this was super helpful. Just for, I guess, a little note to the audience, like we want to have you come back on and continue to go into more detail on some of these subjects, but this is really your intro podcast for the Slice of Healthcare audience to get to know you, the Ivy Brain Tumor Center, and again, some of those challenges that you highlighted. So I look forward to having you on again very soon, and we can dive into more of these topics. And thank you again for your time.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.